Break down some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former State Senator Jim DeBackus and former Hinckley Institute Director Kirk Jowers joining us via Zoom. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Glenn.
All right, let's get right into the race for governor taking shape during the week. The deadline to turn in signatures was on Monday. We now have former Utah GOP Thomas Wright, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, and former Governor Jon Huntsman Jr. officially on the primary ballot. Kirk, let's start with you. What do you make of how this signature gathering process played out, given that the rules of the game completely changed not too long ago?
Yeah, it became a very difficult process, and kudos to the three who made it on. The first two, got in early and got it done. Huntsman really had to go through an arduous process to make it, but he ended up with over 60,000 signatures. They stopped counting at 28,000, so maybe upwards of 35,000 valid signatures. And that, of course, will hold him in good stead for the primary, all three of them, because they've had to get out and talk to a lot more people than perhaps, say, Greg Hughes, who never started the process. And so he's been very focused on, 3,000 to 4,000 delegates, and that's about it at this point.
All right, we'll get more into the convention process in just a minute. Jim, let's bring you in. Not too long ago, you were sounding the alarm for former Governor Huntsman that if he doesn't get signatures, he'd be in trouble going into convention.
It's a black swan. I don't know how Huntsman pulled it out. I mean, he had 4 or 5 days to get thousands of signatures. They couldn't go door to door. Somehow they came up with those names. I think he has no chance to get in the top 2 with the convention. So that was his last straw. But give the Huntsman campaign credit. Somehow they got those names and they passed scrutiny.
Yeah, and as Kirk pointed out, I will say again, not only did they get to the 28, but they collected several thousand more signatures on top of that. Kirk, I want to get your thoughts on what Jim just said, that he doesn't believe Huntsman could be one of the top 2 contenders coming out of convention. What are your thoughts there?
Well, that's the conventional wisdom because, of course, we're using the 2018 delegates, so the candidates weren't able to get them on their own. So there are no Huntsman plants, so to speak. And of course, these 2018 delegates favored hard right over more pragmatic Republicans. Mitt Romney did not win in 2018, for example. So I see his point. I would never underestimate Jon Huntsman. He's gone through 2 conventions successfully. And if that was his only path, I think he would probably find a way. Now that he's found it, Jim may be right that he won't be a top 2 because he won't need to focus as much there.
Real quick on that point, though. You mentioned these are delegates that didn't go with Romney at convention. However, it was a very close vote, and those delegates did send Mitt Romney to the primary election. So are those delegates that might be looking at Huntsman as well?
Oh, certainly. But they'll be looking at Huntsman and Cox, and that's the problem. It may be as much as a 50, close to a 50-50 split on kind of the far right, very convention-focused delegates versus, maybe the more pragmatic, kind of true Republican type of delegates. But the question will be, how are they going to split that out? And this convention is going to have different rules. It's got the ranked choice voting. You may not have the herd mentality that sometimes happen when you're all stuck in a big hall. Ranked choice meaning the last one drops out and the second choice of that person goes on, etc. So it's interesting to see, can Huntsman can Huntsman or Cox be one of the 2 that comes out, which of course limits what the field will actually be on the primary ballot.
Okay, I'll get back to you for what you think will happen in convention, but Jim, let's bring you in first. Who do you see coming out of convention for the Republican side? Will more candidates be added to the ballot?
Look, this is really critical. And this is a perversion of our whole democracy here, because not one Democrat is going to have a say about who's going to be the next governor. We've been blocked out since the 80s, and this little cabal of Republicans get together, and let's face it, they're the fringe people in the party, as shows up at a lot of Democratic conventions. So you have all of these candidates who have to kiss up to the total fringe, small percentage of a pretty conservative party. I think this is going to be a good election for Democrats who have no chance. And I'm a former state party chair. The Democrats have no chance to win the governorship. It just isn't there. And they're kidding themselves if they think they can. They ought to probably go register as Republicans for a couple of weeks, hold their nose, and then make the difference about who we're going to have as the next governor for the next 4, 8. Look, Herbert's been in there 10 years. Utah governors have a tremendous influence. And the only way that Democrats are going to have any say about this at all, or most of the people in the state actually, is going to be go register as a Republican, hold their nose, get registered. You know, you have to give a blood test. I don't know what you have to do, prove your purity, then go register, and then you have some say. And then maybe if we all get together, we'll have a lot of say.
Okay, but real quick, Jim, do you see any other candidates being added to the Republican primary ballot through convention?
No, but what do I know?
Okay, what about you, Kirk? Any other candidates coming out of convention?
I couldn't hear Jim's answer, which...
So he said he doesn't think anyone else will be coming out and added to the ballot out of convention. Do you see any other candidates coming out of convention and being added to the primary ballot?
I think Greg Hughes has a very good chance to come out of convention. I think there will be a certain portion of delegates who will want to try to say that the convention matters and put someone through. So I think Hughes is probably the only one who has a shot.
I misunderstood the question, Lynn. I agree with Kirk. Hughes, okay. I think, is coming out. He's the darling of Trump. He is, Trump called him my man, the first guy. I think he's coming out, maybe the only one for sure. And then we'll see what happens to all the rest of them.
Okay, real quick, I want to get to another topic real quick, and that's this balance that state leaders are trying to find between the economic health and public health regarding this virus. We've seen millions of Americans losing their jobs, tens of thousands of Utahns losing their jobs. How much longer can the economy take this route that we're on right now? Jim, let's start with you.
Look, it is not about economics. And as soon as we say it's all about the jobs and we haven't taken care of the virus, we'll be back in a month or 2 or 3. And you talk about an economic complete collapse. We need the commissioners in Utah County and around the state kicking in and taking a couple of weeks and get rid of this virus and stop pretending it's not there. And that somehow Utah, particularly rural Utah, is somehow immune to all this and they don't have to follow all this stuff. We get one go around and we ought to enforce it in every county in the state. We ought to have a governor with the guts to completely call for a statewide stay at home. Let's all work together and get this done in the short term and not open it in another month or 2. We're right back where we were. No, of course, we need to get rid of the virus and then the economy will take care of itself.
All right, Kirk, your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously a lot of personal pain when you take a look at this in both areas.
There is. It's really a grim calculus that I think the economists put it. But I always listen first to Mike Leavitt on this, our former governor and former Secretary of Health and Human Services. And his quote is, everything we do before a pandemic will seem alarmist. Everything we do after will seem inadequate. In Utah, the actions have worked. They really have. The social distancing and everything else has worked. I think the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints made it easier for the state because they acted early. And that set the stage for the state to be in a really good place. So I think you'll see Utah do what Germany, for example, is doing, is that they will very step by step loosen certain restrictions. Lieutenant Governor Cox put out a tweet that lists a few of those potential steps, and you'll see if the number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths start to escalate. Then you'll probably need to clamp down a little bit. If not, then you'll see more and more steps, and at some point you'll see even a more comprehensive plan. But it's going to take a while, but you're right. This is incredible pain to the economy. International Monetary Fund projected the economy would contract 3% this year. It's worst downturn since the Great Depression. There are 100 examples. The UK says their economy may contract by 8%. When you get to that, you are causing deaths and pain on the other end, and at some point you are making those decisions.
All right, we are going to have to end it on that note. Fantastic conversation. I appreciate having both of you with us this morning. Thanks for being here.